Want to welcome you to another Facebook and YouTube Live. And if you're checking this out for the first time, this monthly live stream is done to support and serve the needs of everyday nurse educators working in the trenches and to really prepare you with practical strategies to develop clinical judgment that will, again, prepare our graduates for the complexities of real-world clinical practice. And again, if we've never met and you're joining us for the first time, my name is Keith. I'm the founder of Keith RN, and I've been on this journey for almost 13 years to basically just share innovative strategies with the passion to focus on strengthening and developing, again, clinical judgment so our students can transition successfully to real-world clinical practice. And really how we do that. And we're going to talk about that today. This is a topic I'm really excited to share with you all. And so if you've got educators that are really needing to hear something very practical and powerful to not just transform nursing education, but to reform it, to really be part of a new reformation that is needed in nursing education. We're going to talk about it. We're going to unpackage what does that look like. And this is going to be something that's going to really guide and influence Keith RN in 2025, because really what I've been about for the last 13 years is really making educational best practices practical. Taking Dr. Benner's work from educating nurses, a call for radical transformation, which we'll also talk about tonight, because that was a seminal work that every educator needs to be aware of, because it lays the foundation for what is truth. What are the educational best practices? Because that's truth as a nurse educator. We need to embrace it. And more importantly, operationalize it and live it out. And that's why we're struggling to strengthen and improve the readiness for practice of our graduate nurses. And we'll talk about ways to make that practical. But the bottom line is I've been on this journey creating unfolding case studies and other practice-informed strategies drawn from the literature, drawn from Dr. Patricia Benner and Chris Tanner and other heavy hitters that every educator needs to be aware of to, again, strengthen and improve nursing education. So again, our graduates not only successfully transition, but this is what we must always remember as nurse educators, to improve the outcomes of the patients they will care for. Because failure to rescue is still a problem. And if you were to Google that term, it's a problem that identifies that nurses who fail to recognize and notice and then interpret the significance of what they're seeing of a change of status, a complication like shock, septic shock, goes unrecognized too long, that patient can die. So again, developing clinical judgment for practice readiness isn't just about, for the student, though it is. We must never forget it's also about the patients who have an infinite value and worth and are so precious to the families that they're a part of. And too many patients have been lost, have died needlessly. And we need to be a part of that solution as well, though that will not be the emphasis for today's topic. So as I shared, we're going to be talking about transforming, but beyond that, reformation and what that means. And we're going to unpackage that in just a couple minutes. And so I'm not going to go there at this moment, but I do want to share that we do these live streams every month. And before I go there, I want to know who's joining us tonight, because again, we do these once a month and I see we've got a great turnout. And so just simply share, just put your name and say hello. Let us know where you're coming from, because this is a really powerful, we are literally connecting educators across the country to hear a message that, again, can be like leaven in a powerful way to innovate and transform how nursing is taught. So I'm just going to throw some links in the chat. It takes about 30 seconds to get some feedback, so I'm not going to have an awkward silence, but I do want to share a couple of things here. I want to share some links in the chat. I'll just do it real quickly, one at a time, and then I'll welcome those that are here. The first one is that these Facebook Lives are also on YouTube, and it's the easiest place to find them. They're typically about an hour long. It's a free, powerful teaching that you all can be a part of and access. We also, at Keith RN, we've got a YouTube channel called Think Like a Nurse. If you're looking for little videos for your students on incivility or don't be that nurse, powerful. simple. They're free. Go to the website or go to Think Like a Nurse, which is basically where both the live streams as well as the other content that I've developed over the years, about 10, 12 years worth of YouTube. Some of them are a little bit edgy, but they're fun. And they, again, are all focused on being part of a transformational change in education. So again, our graduates are better prepared for practice. Finally, I want to just share the Facebook group. I'm blessed to be the admin of Teachers Transforming Nursing Education. 18,000 plus educators, most of them highly engaged, will respond to your comments, questions, struggles, posts, as well as just sharing their documents and worksheets. So again, if you're not a part of that community, you need to be, because we all need support. If we're going to transform nursing education and then ultimately reform it, we must do it together. We must not be in silos. And many of us are siloed, unfortunately, because of things like incivility, bullying by faculty to faculty, and other things that are also part of the needed change. But that's the topic again. We've got so many things we could talk about, and we have, but we're going to focus on reforming nursing education. So those links are there for your benefit. I also want to bring on Keith Arren is blessed to have nurse educator consultant Maria Flores-Harris. And Maria, thanks for we're going to do this together. We're going to kind of unpackage some powerful things together. But just explain just what you do as a consultant with Keith Arren and just anything you'd like to share real briefly.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am the nurse consultant for Keith Arren, and really my primary responsibility is to take care of our membership. So if you are a Think Like a Nurse member, thank you. And please reach out to me if there's anything that I can do for you to support you, your faculty, but give you best practices, answer questions, receive feedback. Any of that, I'm your go-to person, and I'm always looking to talk with our customers and hear what you like and what you don't like and what you would like to see, because we are planning for 2025 now. And we have some definite plans, but we would love to hear if there's anything that you specifically want from us. So that's really my main emphasis. I have a few other things that I do as well. I basically just do what Keith tells me to do. I'm here to help him.
Yeah, and it's desperately needed, because I've been doing this way too long, Maria. And I guess, there is a proverb that says two are better than one. And you know what?
I think that's usually the case. It depends on the two, I guess.
Absolutely. But I'm blessed. I'm thankful. I just want to say thank you for all you do to support the educators that, again, are part of our Think Like a Nurse membership. And I'm going to put the link there if anyone wants to take a look to learn more. It's really a unique, innovative platform that provides the tools, hundreds of unfolding case studies and other tools to simply transform the way you teach. But Maria, let's get talking. Let's start with our discussion tonight. We really want to jump in, but I should also welcome here. We've got a lot of people here tonight, and I just want to see who is. I just got to go to the chat here real quick, and I just want to see we got Sarah Cano. Sarah, I know I said that wrong, but Maria, how do you say that? She's.
Oh, don't put me on the spot. I'll say it wrong. I say Kano, but I'm not sure if that's right either.
Well, Sarah, blessed to have you. She's one of our clinical course creators for a new course that's coming. We'll share that at the end. Melissa from Ohio, Kimmy from Alberta, Canada. Kimmy, it's a blessing to have Canadian educators with us. Thanks for joining us. That's the power of the internet, by the way. We can use that for good. Mary from Washington, Norma in Nashville, Jennifer in New York. And Tanya, yes, Tanya, good to see you from Texas. Hope you're staying warm. Ashley in Washington, Christine in Texas, and wow, great to have you all here. So yeah, Sarah says it's all right. So maybe I think we got it close enough, but blessings to have you all here. Joseph, good to have a male educator here. We need to increase the ranks of our male educators to support our male students. Andrea in Ohio, Susan in Providence. Blessings to you all. I don't want to keep rambling here, but thank you all for joining us. You're taking time out of your schedule. We're going to make this good. I am really excited about this topic. I'm always excited to come on and just share some thoughts and my heart and things that are really important to really support and serve your needs. Because really a deeper passion of mine is to really not only create the tools, but to shepherd and to really authentically support your needs and really care. I mean, I could be doing a lot of other things, but I love doing this. I'm blessed to have this opportunity. I don't take this lightly. It's really a gift that I believe the Lord has given me, and I'm thankful to serve in this capacity. So let's get started and talk about our discussion tonight, Maria. And this is a book that rocked my world. Got to kind of go over here. Educating Nurses. Maria, I think don't make me look weird. You got this on an image. You put that up on the screen for me, because this book is a must read still for every nurse educator. If we want to begin the journey to transform how nursing is taught, to really lead to reformation of the institution of nursing education. This book rocked my world as a brand new educator when I started my journey in nursing education back in 2011, 2012, brand new. This book came out and I was feeling the disconnect of why are we teaching 20-page care plans with a NANDA nursing diagnosis with precisely worded 3-part statement that I was holding my students to when I was an expert nurse of 25 years of previous experience before I went into education. I don't think like this. Dr. Benner's work gave us permission to do it differently. And really the 4 paradigm shifts I want to highlight, because if we're going to transform how nursing is taught, this is like ground zero. And these paradigm shifts I'm going to start with are basically this. The first one is we must contextualize our content to the bedside of patient care. If we're just teaching our students abstract, just regurgitating the textbook, we're part of the problem. If we're going to prepare our graduates for practice, they can read the textbook on their own. We need to highlight what's most important, then bring the context of practice using active learning, using case-based learning, using practice-based strategies. And we're not going to go in detail, but that's step 1. Step 2 is to basically look at bringing clinical and classroom learning together. We can't silo out classroom learning and clinical learning. We need to bring clinical learning and clinical realities into the classroom, and then bring what's most important from the classroom, like understanding pathophysiology and the concepts that they must understand, like cardiac output equals stroke volume times heart rate, so that they can apply that knowledge from classroom into clinical. Third paradigm shift, emphasize clinical reasoning. The essence of clinical reasoning, it doesn't get better than Tanner's clinical judgment model and its alignment with the nursing process. What are you noticing? Step 1. What's your interpretation of what you've noticed? Third step of how are you going to respond as a nurse? And finally, evaluative reflecting. This aligns with the nursing process. And this is the foundation that we've lost, and we're regaining it slowly. And the fourth and final aspect that we need to do to transform education is emphasize professional formation or professional identity as a nurse instead of socialization to the role. And we're going to talk about professional identity, but the essence and definition of professional identity is what it means to become a nurse identity that is reflected by thinking, acting, feeling, and caring as a nurse. It's like our students need to understand that that a nurse is not something you do. It's something you become. And we as educators must recognize that is foundational. If we don't develop that professional identity, which is where we're struggling, we're going to talk about that. Maria's going to share some thoughts. We will not lay the foundation that they can think like a nurse and apply that knowledge to practice. Formation is foundational and essential. And this is where we're really struggling and where we truly need to reform nursing education so our graduates are prepared for practice. And so, Maria, any thoughts on just, we're not going to go deep in the weeds with professional identity right now, but just you're very passionate about this topic. And I'd just like to get your thoughts and how you see that.
Well, I don't know how deep you want me to go right now.
I want you to give an overview first.
Okay, well, I think the biggest thing that I really want to get across to us as educators is that professional identity really is the foundation for everything that we do. And it is something that we have to intentionally teach and talk about. And we're not doing that. And that came to light last week, and I guess I'll talk more about that in a while. But it certainly came to light that we're not covering it. We're not even talking about it, and we're kind of, this is why we're talking about an academic practice gap. This is why we're talking about shortages and crises and incivility and all these issues that we're having in nursing. I believe the reason we have those is because we have gotten so far away from our identity as nurses, and we're not even talking to our students about it. So yeah, that's really the big thing. We'll get more in depth about it, but just being intentional with teaching it.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to know as educators that this idea of professional identity formation, I want to thank Dr. Nelda Godfrey from the University of Kansas and all of her hardworking colleagues that I have been blessed to work with over the years. Since about 2019, Dr. Godfrey, an innovator and fellow in the Academy of Nursing, has spearheaded this movement to really help our new nurses embrace and understand what that professional identity is. And that website that I've just shared, every educator needs to take a look at that. This is ground zero for understanding, defining, and operationalizing professional identity, so you can operationalize it in your curriculum and be intentional to develop this formation. Just like physicians have done, medicine does such a phenomenal job of socializing and the formation of residents into a physician by understanding what it means to be a physician. And the mantle that you're taking on is like a new identity. Nursing is in the process as a newer profession of really understanding and operationalizing that. And so I just want you to say that, I just want to kind of just highlight that. And Sarah has a comment, basically, now let's throw it up here, Maria, and if you have some comments, but she says it all starts with awareness, making people in education aware and identify where the gap is, or more important, how to incorporate from day one. Any thought or comment for that?
No, she's absolutely right. I'm just, I absolutely agree with. We certainly, we have a gap in that we're not talking about it. And it really does need to be incorporated from day one. So that's a great point, Sarah. Again, I think it's foundational. So we begin with it.
And so I want to encourage all of the educators who are here today to really go to that website, Dr. Nelda Godfrey in the University of Kansas, as a starting point. But what I want to do is kind of set the table, because the title of tonight's presentation, this is a theme that I feel is just on my heart, to go beyond transformation, but to really focus on reformation and really kind of fleshing out what's the difference. You'll say, it's kind of like, what's the difference between critical thinking, clinical reasoning, clinical judgment? They all kind of sound the same, and we've used the same words to do different things. Not true. There's nuanced differences. And so what I want to do is basically start with looking at transformation, and I want to define it and kind of put my spin on it so we can flesh out the difference. If we're going to go beyond transformation, which again, Dr. Benner said, it's a call for radical transformation in nursing education. This was published in 2010. What I'm advocating is, let's be like Tanya in Texas. Let's go big or go home. Let's basically look at the differences between transformation and going bigger with reformation and what that looks like, and begin to slowly peel this onion and making it very practical. We're going to share the big picture onion layers, and we're not going to go deep in the weeds, but it's very needed, because I think this is what we're missing. We're missing the reformation and what that distinction is. So let's talk about transformation real quickly. Transformation, dictionary definition, complete change, radical transformation. Sounds really good. It's kind of like, think about a caterpillar and that chrysalis into a beautiful butterfly. That's transformation, to go from a little worm into a beautiful butterfly. That captures the essence of transformation. And the way that I look at it is that transformation is something that is done on an individual basis. See, the seed and what's planted to really transform is that we need to change the way we think about something. That leads to an inward change and an outward action. You see, only people, in my estimation, only an individual can be radically transformed or changed. And how do we do that? We do it by changing the way we think about something. And so therefore, it's like challenging these assumptions about why don't we, looking at active learning versus PowerPoint regurgitation. When you get the vision of recognizing the educational best practice of active learning and operationalizing that, as you begin to change the way you think, it changes what you do and then influences student learning. So I look at transformation as an inward, personal change that leads to outward action. As you change the way you think, it changes the way you perform. And that's true in all areas of life, as well as in how you're in your classroom teaching. So now let's look at reformation. And so, when you look at, if I were to define transformation, I would look at it as an individual educator who makes needed change resulting from correcting their false teaching assumptions to educational best practices. So we go from believing what is false to embracing what is true, which is, again, embracing educational best practices wherever it leads us. And let's never forget this. Academic freedom never gives an educator the freedom to reject educational best practices. We don't have that choice in clinical practice. We don't have it in academia. So let's kind of just clear that slate as well. So now let's go to reformation and let's talk about that. Reformation is looking at an institution, because when you are an individual educator, you're able now to reform an institution and what that looks like. And reformation is bringing it back to its original purpose. And so when you look at reformation, it's not just changing it. It's not like having a revolution or a transformation. It's all about what was the original purpose of this institution. And I want to ask a really important question right now to our audience. What is the original purpose of nursing education? When you look back at this profession that began as over 2,000 years ago as a ministry of the early Christian church, and then throughout the centuries, and Nightingale was a reformer, but she wasn't the starting point. What was the original intent of nursing? What's our purpose? What do we need to recover? Because when you look at reformation, people are kind of saying, this sounds a little kind of out in the clouds, Keith. What I'd like to basically share is, let's look at a historical example to kind of make this stick. The Protestant Reformation, over 400 years ago in Germany. Martin Luther was a monk who basically had a revelation that challenged some of the assumptions of the Catholic Church in that age. There were things like indulgences, where people would pay money to build the cathedral in St. Peter's. If you pay money, your sins are forgiven and you're absolved. That was a lie. That was a deception. And Martin Luther recognized scriptural truth and fidelity to that wasn't the way the church began 1,500 years ago at that time. And he recognized that was an error that needed to be corrected. And the Reformation began a process that reformed the entire church and is still with us today. And so when you look at that, what the original purpose of nursing education, what is it that we've lost that we need to recover? And so that's a question we're going to ask here, but I would just like to just get a sense as far as we've got some feedback here. And I'd like, Maria, I want you to, I've talked enough here. I want to get I'm going to let you go there. And let's just pull up, which one of those would you like to pull up?
Well, I'm going to put them all on the screen because I think they're all important. Shannon says caring for people.
Yeah.
Sarah says standardized practice, but she threw in there, of course, based on best practices. And Sarah says, Shannon Murphy, in my opinion, we start by educating the educators and show research on how students learn. So Sarah is really all about getting those best practices into the classroom, and completely agree. I'll go back to Shannon and what you said with caring for people. This is where I wish we could have some dialogue, Sarah, or Shannon. But I'm going to ask you, if you will, add to your comment there. But when I saw you're caring for people, I kind of, it's a little disheartening that we're in a profession that is a profession that cares for people, and we see so much incivility, right? Incivility between students, between faculty and students, among faculty, colleagues. And that goes back to professional identity, right? That's not who we are as nurses. And if we have a strong professional identity, we actually have less incivility in our workplace. And that is a basically a root, if you will, of who we are as a nursing profession, is caring for one another. Completely agree on the best practices. Norma says safe patient care. Mary says staffing admin issues. I'm not, Mary, if you want to expand upon that, because I'm not quite sure where you were going with that, give us some more so that we can talk about that a little more. Melissa says, our students complain if we don't have PowerPoints. Melissa, this is where I think it goes back to what Sarah was saying, is we use best practices, but we have to tell students that they're best practices, and we have to show students the research. We have to be, I think, very, very clear, very explicit. We always have to tell students the why, but we have to be transparent. We need to be very transparent with what we're doing in our classes, and be sure we share that with our students. Shannon says that the original purpose of nursing, my number one goal, is always the patient. Everything we do is about the patient, Shannon, right?
Absolutely.
And Mary did expand. Transition to practice. Lacks admin support, she says, and allows for unsafe practices. Okay. So I'm seeing Melissa's also saying she's getting some pushback. So Keith, talk a little bit more about that, because we can talk about best practices, and that we have to implement best practices, but we do have to implement it appropriately, because we all know that we'll get some pushback, and unfortunately, a lot of us have jobs because of our student feedback, our student surveys. And if we get bad student surveys, we may literally be in jeopardy of losing a job, which there's need for reform there. But talk about how to do it appropriately, maybe, and talk a little bit more about it.
No, great point, Maria. And I'm really passionate about this, because if we really understand, see, this is where we need to communicate the why of nursing, not just to ourselves. We need to recover the original purpose of our profession, is to provide patient-centered care, and providing and preparing our graduates for practice is always our priority and is ground zero. And therefore, we need to make sure that our students from day one understand that patient-centered care, You hold, the life of a patient in your hand. Their life literally depends on you. And if you fail to recognize a problem, it can turn into a disastrous outcome, including the death of that patient. That it's always about the patient and patient care. It's not about them as a student. It's about safe patient care. So we're going to do everything we can to prepare you for real world practice. That means we're not going to regurgitate the textbook for you. You can read that. We're going to apply your learning now with unfolding case studies, simulations, and other practice-informed strategies. And so we really need to, in answer to your question, Maria, we really need to really have that same laser focus. And we communicate that to our students. It's all about the patient, always, and being safe in providing safe patient care. And we need to maintain that. And it's like when our students insist on, like I saw some of the comments from Melissa, well, they insist on PowerPoints, da, 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 da. It doesn't matter. That doesn't prepare you for practice. You see, we need to hold this line. And we're allowing in some programs the inmates to run the asylum. That is absolutely nuts. And we've got to, as educators, push back for the integrity of our profession, own our profession and how it's taught, and we maintain fidelity to our original purpose, which is providing safe patient care. And again, preparing them for practice. I mean, how can we not lose sight of that? But we have. And what's really interesting, Maria? In all these things that I saw here, when we look at what's the original purpose of nursing education, I didn't see one comment that said preparing them for the NCLEX licensure examination. And what we must do as educators is that I know that we recognize that, yes, it's a practice-based profession, but I just want to plant a seed. I'm not going to go deep in it right now, but we will in a little bit, is that we must remember that reflect on the culture in your program. It's like we have to maintain fidelity, that preparing our graduates for practice is always priority one. And if we prepare for practice, do we have enough faith to believe that if we adhere to that fidelity, to that truth, the NCLEX will take care of itself? We don't have to teach to the test, as we have done historically for way too many years, with a culture that is centered on NCLEX success and the testing we do every semester. It's like that's part of the problem. I'm not against NCLEX success, but it can't be this, what it has been, in nursing education for the last 20 years. Let's just be honest about that, and let's de-emphasize NCLEX and re-emphasize practice. And I'm confident that if we just get those back like this, doesn't mean that we just go like, it doesn't mean anything. Of course it does. Your first time pass rates are still important. But if we prepare for practice using educational best practices, I can guarantee that your program is going to have just fine NCLEX pass rates. Because I'm old enough. I graduated in '83 from an ADN program. There was no predictive testing. I just simply was taught well by an ADN faculty, took the NCLEX, passed the first time, and many of you educators are old enough to remember those days. Why can't we go back? That's part of where we need to recognize that the whole culture of NCLEX success and the industry that has arisen, multi-million, even billion-dollar business, is part of the problem. And again, we need to find a balance. I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm just saying let's be willing, with fidelity to our profession, to go back to our original purpose, and let's own it, and let's teach it well. So that's my hobby horse. And
let me say that there's some great comments, and I want to go back to something. Shannon said that she just had a student say to her yesterday that I pay a lot of money for my education. I love that, Shannon. Don't you love hearing that? But let me say this. Students do have that transactional mindset. They're paying for their education like they pay for a Big Mac at McDonald's. We as educators have a responsibility to give them a transformational mindset. And the way to do that is to explain to them why we're doing certain things, and to say, you're paying good money for me to teach you in a way that you're actually going to learn. And that is for me to do these best practices. I need to use case-based learning. I need to use active learning. Problem-based learning. Generation Z likes to be involved in the problem, and they like to problem solve. They like experiential learning. That lends itself to nursing, guys. In my opinion, we shouldn't have a problem with Gen Z, because if they want to be involved and they want practical knowledge and they want experiential learning, that's what we should be doing in nursing. Everything should be contextualized to the patient so they know they're learning to take care of a patient. So I say, if they say you're paying for it, yes, you are. And that's why I'm going to give you the best. I'm going to give you best practices based on research, period, end of discussion. That's one of those drop the mic moments. You just made my point. That is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
What else have we got here? Let's see. I see. Okay, traditional students don't have foundational skills. And Sophia says, I tell my students, I can't tell you what's on the test because when you punch in your test, I think, Sophia, that we may have ready, because when you punch in your test, maybe impromptu. I think maybe we didn't get the full message there.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let me take that down, Sophia, and feel free to add to it if you want to. Well, I'm trying to take it down. I get it. Kim says, when you punch into work, you don't know who you'll care for. That's so true. Okay. Yep. What's next, Keith?
And let's unpackage a little bit more, Maria. We're kind of jumping around here. We have a little bit of a script, but not we roll with the changes. I'm an ER nurse, and I like to just be flexible. But I think that when we look at kind of the principles we're talking about tonight, what do we need? This is the big takeaway I want you to take away from tonight's topic is really understanding the difference between transformation and reformation. And reformation, again, being, let's get back to our original purpose. Let's really look at your program through the lens of, are we really aligning ourselves with emphasizing caring, emphasizing, again, the values of our profession and what that represents, because so our students have that, again, that formation and that acquiring of a new identity. And so I want Maria, we're going to unpackage professional identity formation a little bit further and just really kind of let's make it practical, because you attended a conference recently, and when we look at the values and the essence of understanding big picture professional identity so we can operationalize it, again, there are aspects of professional identity formation in the new ACE and Essentials, and we're not going to unpackage that tonight, but the essence of what professional identity formation represents. But I want us to really kind of let's plant some seeds, Maria, to help our educators make this formation of our identity as a professional nurse practical, using some of the things that we've learned and that you've learned from the work of Nelda Godfrey and the others that emphasize professional identity formation, and connecting that then, not just where it's in the literature, where it is, and it's got a lot of traction, but our students are not aware of it. And they need to be, because if they have a clear identity, it's kind of like when you know your true identity, you will basically withstand the storm. Now, I'm going to give you a brief example of that. And then I'm going to let Maria share her thoughts. I love the movie Gladiator. You have Gladiator, a Roman general, wrongly accused in the Colosseum, thinking that he's just like a slave that's just being killed by in the Colosseum because he has no value. And they ask, and Commodus says, "Slave, what's your name?" And he looks at him and he tells them exactly who he is. I am Marco Aurelius, Roman general, legion of truth, faithful to the Roman emperor. And he tells them his name and his true identity. And it totally is transformational. Our students need to have a similar awareness of the power of their professional identity that is being formed in them, so that they too can withstand the challenges and the rigors, not of the Colosseum, but of real world professional practice. And that's really what professional identity is all about. And when they don't have that identity, they are not resilient. It influences their resilience and their ability to stick it out in the profession. Many of them we've got 30+% leaving the profession entirely of our new grads in 2 years or less. That is a tragedy. And formation identity can help that. So Maria, what are your thoughts? And how can we make this practical, and just some principles that you think would really would help our educator audience?
I mean, the big thing is that we just need to talk about it. We need to be sure that we incorporate it. As I said, we're not.
Why don't you put up the tree? The tree is very powerful and practical. And why don't you just explain? That's a powerful infographic that's on the website on professional identity. And what are some highlights, Maria, that you could just kind of that can just kind of put this all together?
So I'll mention the International Society for Professional Identification for Professional Identity in Nursing. That is a great resource, and this is actually where the tree came from. It is from the University of Kansas, but that's also the International Society for Professional Identity in Nursing. This is Nelda Godfrey's work, and Nelda Godfrey and many others at this point's work. Basically, the professional identity tree shows our roots. Those are roots like integrity, caring, empathy, those values that are core to nursing. And hopefully our nursing students come into school with some of those, but if not, then we need to help develop them. And we actually can help develop those. There is research that shows that we can teach students how to care, and can actually help students with gaining empathy. But we need to be able to assess that and see where our students are and help them develop. And then the professional identity formation, the trunk of the tree there, is basically where the formation takes place. And that's where our coworkers and our colleagues and our instructors and our mentors, that's where they come into play. And hopefully they're providing you with a healthy workplace and a healthy educational setting, and nurturing that professional identity so that you get to the top there, you bear your fruit. And the fruit is patient-centered care. It's clinical judgment. It's all the things that we want to see in a nurse. So I like sharing this tree. I had several students. I shared this with a huge group of students recently who had never heard of professional identity.
Yeah. How many students were in that audience, Maria?
There were 800 students, and not a single student raised their hand when I said, "Have you heard of professional identity?" So showing this tree and talking a little bit about what professional identity means, because here's the bottom line. Professional identity has been directly linked to increased job satisfaction, decreased burnout, increased retention, and better patient outcomes. So that's why it's important. That's why we need to talk about it. And this tree really, I think it makes sense to students. That's what I wanted to say. I had several students come up and say, I really liked the graphic. It made sense to me. And my call to action for those students were to identify today what areas you remain weak in, what areas you need some improvement in, and seek out the resources and the mentors that you need to improve those areas now before you graduate. Because we want students to bear fruit even before graduation and help ease that transition to practice. A strong identity in nursing has been directly linked to retention, and that includes retention in that first year. That we're losing so many students. So I just wanted to share that tree and share the International Society for Professional Identity in Nursing. These are great resources for you to use to talk about this with your students if you're not doing that already.
And what I would add to that, Maria, and I think for us as educators, we need to really embrace the importance of really the ethical comportment of practice. Some of the pillars of professional identity include leadership, the knowledge of the profession, but also the ethical, the values and the character traits that a nurse must embody. And, that includes integrity, for example, and, the plagiarism and cheating that we see that is prevalent and all too common in nursing education. Again, just reinforcing that as part of your new identity, you're going to be tempted to do and take shortcuts in practice. Not even listen to breath sounds, as we talked about a couple months ago, and some of the shortcuts that we're seeing that we should never take as a nurse. But if that formation and the focus of patient-centered care is clear, again, it can mitigate some of the temptations that our students will take, and integrity matters. And I think we need to just raise some of these values. And I just want to share just a quick, an object lesson. This is a book I found at a thrift store, 25 cents, called Nursing Ethics, 1900, by Isabel Hampton Robb, who was the founder of the ANA, the National League for Nursing, and the American Journal of Nursing, early in the 19th century. An entire textbook on nursing ethics and how a nurse conducts themselves, the ethical comportment, the professional behavior, an entire textbook. She was a nurse educator at Johns Hopkins and developed the first significant program on this side of the Atlantic from Nightingale's as a contemporary of Nightingale. So Hampton Robb is kind of, when you look at the purpose, we don't necessarily need an entire textbook on ethics, but what I want us to recognize as far as what do we need to recover in nursing education is a renewed emphasis on the values and the character that a professional nurse needs to embody, assimilate, and then live out. If we value and respect human life, which our patients represent, created in the image of God, inherent value and worth, why aren't we showing that same dignity, value, and worth to our colleagues within civility and its prevalence? You see, this is where there's a disconnect. And we need to, again, we're all works in progress, but let's, again, emphasize first things first. We need to first care like a nurse before we can also think like a nurse. It influences what you notice. That's from Tanner's article in 2006, a powerful takeaway. So again, these values matter. And I don't think we emphasize them enough. I think we just assume that our students have them, or, we just give it short shrift in the curriculum. And these are things that must be integrated in everything we do from semester 1 to semester 4 and 5. Any thoughts?
Well, I just want to say this one thing that I think is important that we need to remember is that we are role models for our students, and we need to role model the behavior that we want to see in our students. I had a student come up to me after my presentation to say, I noticed that you didn't talk about the incivility amongst faculty. And there's a reason for that. I made a couple of comments that faculty got excited about, so I decided I wouldn't pick on faculty anymore. I kind of let some hard truths come out, and I had a couple of faculty's feathers ruffled, so I didn't want to ruffle any more feathers. But the student said, I see my instructors being awful to one another, talking about one another. I'm talking about nurses in the setting, practice setting. And so we, even though I know we're adults, she said, but that becomes the norm, and we feel like it's okay to do.
Yeah.
So
it's role model. It's
that's
role
so
model.
we have to be positive role models. And Keith, I know you're going to like this. Norma says, and I know you're going to want to talk about this, that our program focuses on what is your why.
Yeah. And that's, again, when you know your why as a nurse or as a nurse educator, what's your purpose? What do you want to accomplish as a nurse? Why am I still doing this after 12, 13 years, never expecting this journey to even begin? It's because I want to make a difference, want to change. And even though I get tired and weary, and I know every educator has the same struggles, I'm not unique. When you have your why, you're going to remember your reasons for why you're doing what you're doing, which isn't always a lot of fun, but it's meaningful and it's going to make a significant difference in the lives of others. And that's really the legacy we all want to live. But our students need to make that same. Our students need to basically, if they are grounded in their why, we need to help identify that. And that should be something we are doing in every program in that first semester. Why did you want to be a nurse? Now, some of the motivations might not be yours. That's okay. But what's the true why, your true north? Makes a difference for all of us, Maria. So yeah, I love that. I love that comment.
Yeah, great comment. I'm trying to read through some more here.
There's a lot here tonight, Maria, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I love the engagement. There's been so much engagement that I apologize if I'm not getting everyone's points in, because there have been so many good points. Sophia says, I came out of retirement after one semester. I want to promote the profession and continue to raise compassionate nurses who can think.
Right.
Thank you, Sophia. And that's what we need, is those positive role models. And you came back because you care so much about the profession, because you have strong professional identity. We care about our profession and we want to uphold our profession when we have strong professional identity.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sophia, for coming back and being a positive role model. Keith, do you want to get to maybe talk about the conference? And you guys keep throwing comments in and I'll pull them up, but we have something very important that we need to mention to you, and I will put it up here.
Yeah, I wanted, one of the things in just closing, and this has been a wonderful discussion. I just want to thank all of you for just sharing your thoughts, comments. I mean, we all are contributing to this, but I hope that, as you leave this webinar, want you to know that you're part of that needed change. You're part of that reformation that's needed. But one of the things we want to carry the banner for is that there is a powerful conference coming up the first of the new year in January 13th and 14th. I'm just going to share the link here that Keith RN will be a part of. We were invited to participate, and it is Educating Nurses, a Radical Transformation 2025 conference. And this conference is going to be focused on, again, the theme of transformation. And I will be a moderator. Keith RN will be a vendor there. It's going to be in Las Vegas at the Luxor. But I will also be a moderator for a session on this very topic, beyond transformation, and talking about reformation and some of the paradigm shifts. So we want to bring feedback. We want educators to contribute to like a roundtable discussion that will empower every educator who attends. But more importantly, what I love about this conference, Maria, for the first time that I am aware of, you're going to have Dr. Patricia Benner and Dr. Chris Tanner together as keynotes. And I have not seen them together in my 13 years of doing conferences all around the country as either an attender or speaker or a vendor. So these are the heavy hitters that, when you're talking about people who are the scholars and the living legends of nursing education of our generation, this is a chance to learn from them. And there'll be people like Garrett Chan, Pat Kyriakidis, a colleague of Dr. Benner's who's been an innovator for years as well. So please, it's a very affordable conference with some powerful people that are, again, focused on transformation. I'll be there as a secondary player, but I'd love to meet anybody in the audience. And Maria will be there with me. And we're just going to basically soak it in. I want a selfie with Dr. Tanner. I have been advocating the Tanner's clinical judgment model for way too long, even when it wasn't popular. And I need a selfie. That'll be worth the trip for me, Maria. So I don't know about you, but any thoughts or comments?
No, I'm excited about it. I'm certainly gonna sit back and be a sponge. And try to soak up all the good stuff. I hope that some of you will be there, and if you are, please come by the Keith RN booth. We would love to meet you. and love to have a discussion. I love to talk to educators. So
Yeah. I love Melissa's comment in closing, just saying, I've gained, this is why we do this, Melissa. I love this comment. I've gained a lot of weight proof, so maybe that will help create change. I hope that what you've taken away from this presentation and this webinar will add to that weight to strengthen, again, how you teach and what you do. I will say this, is that if you found benefit from this presentation, if you go to the YouTube channel, Think Like a Nurse, under live streams, you will find the link to this immediately after this presentation. If there are colleagues that you're saying, you need to hear this, you know what, grab the link from the YouTube channel, Think Like a Nurse, send it to your colleagues. And again, that's how we can be part of the needed change together. And again, just a pleasure to serve your needs. And this is why we do what we do. So anyways, Maria, I'll let you have the final word.
No, Kim, I put the link in again to the conference there, so you can grab it there. We have a few minutes, so I would just love to say, did anybody have any closing thoughts, comments?
Takeaways. I like takeaways. I kind of say, what? Okay, we had an hour together, and we had a great attendance tonight. Such a blessing. What do you take away from this? You know, me and Maria always, we put a lot of work into these to really kind of make sure we have something to share that's going to be meaningful. But I'd like to know, what did you take away that's going to impact how you teach and how you're going to help be part of the needed reformation of nursing education? Let's put this one in the history books, just like the Protestant Reformation in 1517. Let this be something that we can be a spark in a small way. I hope that we can ignite. And again, close this academic practice gap for 50 years. It's time to shut it down once and for all.
So we would love to see your takeaways. Also, I would, if you're feeling Keith's message about Reformation, but you're still wondering, how do I go about doing that? Drop in the chat as well. What do you need? What do you need to help you with that Reformation? Maybe there's something that we can do for you.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm nimble like David versus Goliath. We can easily with Maria, and we've got I'm blessed to have a lot of collaborators, and anyone can join me, and I will pay you well for your services to create new content, case studies, worksheets, things that would be innovating, that you're willing to collaborate with. And so I'm really, even though we've got a membership platform with a lot of case studies, there's always more things that you need. And, again, if there's anything there if there's something that you're just not seeing that you need, we'd love to consider anything, because again, we can, I would love to know what that would be, so we can best serve your needs, which is our mission at Keith RN.
I'm just popping up some of the comments so that you all can see them if you're not looking in chat. Some great comments here.
Yeah. No, I love that. Let's educate quality nurses and not teach to the test. And again, the NCLEX is important, but preparing for practice should always be like rock, paper, scissors. Preparing for practice should always be that paper that covers the rock and is that priority. Yeah, I love Sophia's comment, making students active participants. Absolutely. Let's never forget that it's a 50-50. Teaching and learning, it's not 90-10. It's not the educator's responsibility to spoon feed the students. It's a 50-50. You do your part, I will do mine, and it's an equal participation. So yeah, that's part of that piece there. So yeah, great feedback, great comments.
Yes. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for showing up and spending your hour with us. We really appreciate it. And we hope that we collaborate with many of you in the future.
Amen. We'll see you next month. Topic to be determined. Maybe we'll build on this. We only got through about half of what we wanted to share. So we've got some nuggets that we could still unpackage here. So anyways, Godspeed on your journeys to making a difference. And thank you again.